Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. So I'm Ryan Graham with PropFuel. I head up our sales and marketing team here. I'm just going to give everyone just probably 30 seconds to kind of get into the room today. So welcome everyone. I see lots of people filing in. So I'll just, like I said, I'll give everyone a moment. I know gonna have a big surge of people coming in. So yeah, welcome everyone. Looks like just probably about everyone who is going to be here is maybe in now at this point. So we'll get started. So again, welcome. So I'm Ryan Graham with PropFuel. Um, what we're going to be talking about today is a super exciting topic. So we're going to be focused on the idea of the topic of cross-channel engagement and some ideas to strengthen the way that you engage your members. And so I'm going to share my screen here. Everyone should be able to see my screen in just a moment. All right, you should see it now. So as we go, before I kind of get into things, if you have questions, if you have comments, please put them into the chat or into the Q&A, and I'll look at those. I'll kind of keep an eye on those, and I'll come back to them and try to address them as they're asked versus holding them all to the end. So please do not hesitate to offer comments and questions and all that sort of stuff as we go. A little bit just quickly about me. So I've been in the association space from a vendor standpoint for close to about 20 years now. Been on a few different sides of the vendor technology landscape in the association space. I love everything about enhancing and improving the member experience and making personalizing or making member engagement personalized. Just that idea to me is just it may sound really silly, but it's exciting. It's really exciting. So I live in Kansas City. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I have three kiddos, two dogs, my wife, and as you can see, I'm wearing Chiefs gear. So if you're a football fan, the Chiefs pulled one out of the fire yesterday. Yep, Chiefs fan pulled one out of the fire yesterday. Diehard Chiefs fan. So sorry if that upsets anyone. It shouldn't upset anyone. All right. So what are we here to discuss? All right. So we are here to talk about cross-channel engagement. There's lots of terms for it, so we'll get into some of those terms. We want to talk about why it matters. We want to look at some non-association examples because a lot can be gleaned by looking at what online retail and just other consumer-oriented companies are doing. And it's pretty important. There's a pretty strong basis for that. Um, and then we want to look at kind of a playbook from the association, from an association standpoint. How can associations achieve or start to step into multi-channel engagement? So the first thing, I'm actually going to skip over this about PropFuel. We're going to come back to that towards the end. So in order to step into this, we kind of have to look backwards a little bit and just kind of look at like contextually, where have we come from a high level standpoint. So long time ago, like the only way to communicate with members, if you were an association, would probably be in person. You'd be holding, town halls or, in person, kind of gatherings. Then obviously we moved to the evolution of being able to print stuff and paper and being able to communicate through those channels. And then of course through the phone, the internet. I kind of have things in a wonky sequence here, but actually fax. So fax came about. Fax was in like mainstream in the 60s. So you could like, if you wanted, you could probably kind of fax people stuff or use it maybe kind of in a mass capacity. And then of course the internet in the 90s. We have, email, social media, email marketing. When I think about things from an association standpoint, if you think of like core kind of marketing and engagement, email marketing, I think about for me, like that was kind of at the early point of my career. So I personally graduated college in 2004. And I remember very specifically some of the email marketing platforms. One that sticks out to me is Vertical Response. I remember using Vertical Response, and the idea was, wow, we can automate sending this email to 7,000 people. Like that's really interesting in terms of mass communication. And then, of course, that has graduated to marketing automation. And the promise of marketing automation is a few things, but being of course able to like automate drip campaigns, which is great. putting people into segments, so kind of narrowing things down a little bit, using data in a little bit more of an intelligent way. So like we have these kind of gradual marks where we've continued to kind of move along. What cross-channel engagement is something that is really unique. Cross-channel engagement isn't focused necessarily on the message, although the message is part of it. It's not necessarily focused on the automation. The core deliverable of cross-channel engagement is putting the member, in our context, the member at the center of the experience. And what it's doing is naturally you're using lots of channels. So in the context of like multi-channel, cross-channel engagement, you're using email, your website, social, SMS, maybe mobile app, etc. You're using all these channels, but the key is the person's at the center of it and it's a connected experience. That's the entirety of what we're going to be talking about is it's a connected experience. So you providing the experience, the association or whoever the organization is providing that experience knows who the person is when they are moving across channels and can engage them in relevant ways. So if I'm on your website, you know who I am, you know the last thing that I have done or maybe haven't done over email, how I've engaged with you through your LMS, through text message, and you're going to serve up something to me that is relevant and timely on the basis of that. That's kind of the entirety of what we're talking about is the member at the center of the experience. The experience spans multiple channels, but the key is it's all fully connected from a data standpoint. So there's lots of terms. If you've done any research or kind of looked into this topic, there's lots of terms for this. And what I'm not here to do is split hairs on cross-channel, multi-channel, omni-channel, what all of this means. I hate the term omni-channel, by the way, but it actually has a definitive meaning that is, if you look into it, different from some of these other standpoints. So I'm not going to look at this from like a pedantic standpoint in terms of breaking these down. What I'm going to do is focus on the idea of what we talked about, which is, idea of cross-channel engagement, where the data is at the center of the experience. The data is connected between all of these channels. So if you hear me use those terms, and if you're super, super familiar with like the difference between multi-channel engagement and omni-channel engagement, first of all, kudos to you. Second of all, I'm not splitting hairs at that level when we get into this. Why some of this matters. If y'all know Reggie Henry, and I love this example, or I love this quote from him. He's kind of a near and dear friend to PropFuel. So if you know Reggie, he's a longtime leader at ASAE, just a great guy and just a phenomenal champion for the association space. So this is a quote directly from him from a number of years ago that I remember him saying this to us. Basically saying people aren't comparing the experience they have to other associations. What they are doing is they're comparing the experience that they have with your association to their last great experience on their iPhone, or basically what that's meant to represent is the last experience that they had as a consumer. So you could fill in iPhone with Amazon, with Spotify, with Nordstrom's, with, you get the point. Sorry, I was yelling at the TV yesterday during the Chiefs game, so like my voice is kind of hoarse at this point. But yeah, love Reggie. And this quote is just such a good level set in the sense that it's a great reminder of the psyche of our members as they come to the association. They're not comparing their experience that they have right now with you as an association with the other association experience they had. They're comparing it with what they did this morning or last night. And those were probably really strong experiences that were personalized, that spanned channels in a very connected way, that were probably pretty simplified from all the way down to single click purchase or whatever, however you want to look at it. And so that is now the expectation. The expectation is that last experience as a consumer, for better or worse. So that's kind of what we have to think about. What cross-channel engagement does and why it matters is it replaces the guessing. And if you know anything about PropFuel, that's kind of like the big thing that we are focused on combating in a sense. If you know anything, we have about 320 clients. They're all associations. And like where we came from is where we are today, and kind of this is the evolution of where we're growing from, is our whole thing forever has been focused on associations do a lot of guessing. Guessing looks like sending the new member that has just joined your association an 8-paragraph email with links to the 35 member benefits that are available to them. The member benefits are great. They aren't the problem naturally, but I liken that experience to, if you were meeting a member face to face, a new member, and you said, hello, welcome, new member. And there was a desk in front of you. And if you took 35 folders and you spread those folders out across that table, and you said, inside of each one of these is going to be a few pages of information that we printed out to tell you about these 35 member benefits. And you have access to all 35 of these member benefits. Have at it. Naturally, what that person would do is, one, feel kind of overwhelmed. And then they might kind of at a surface level look through some of these, but they're not going to really ground themselves or root themselves in any one of those, most likely, because they're completely overwhelmed. So the idea that, what guessing, the premise behind guessing is let's send everybody everything. And that backfires because generally speaking, more is not bigger is not better. More does not equate to enhanced experience or more consumption. It leads to people being overwhelmed. So if you know PropFuel, what we're focused on is this idea of asking members questions through multiple channels and then using that to guide their experience. But again, the idea of cross-channel engagement is it replaces guessing. It removes the need to guess at what people want because you're grounding in what they're actually doing and what they're telling you, and then you're using that across channels. It naturally gives you the ability to be where members prefer. And the thing that I love about it is it continues the experience. And I'll give you a good example of this in just a little bit. But I'll tell you from my standpoint as a consumer, I oftentimes forget things. Like, I forget that I want that thing, whatever it might be. I may express some interest in it. I may look at it. I may come back to it and look at it again. But sometimes, like, you need that pattern interrupt. And that pattern interrupt may come over text message. It may come over email. It may come while you're on a website. It may come through social. I don't know. Everyone's a little bit different. But being able to pick up where a member has left off in the experience with you, because we see it with our clients. There are so many places where the experience is abruptly stopped. Someone has something in their cart, but they don't continue that process. Someone has, started the new member onboarding form, but it's too long, so they abandon it. Or someone has started their conference registration, started their abstract submission. But the problem is because a lot of the data points for most associations aren't necessarily connected back, it makes it really hard to be able to serve up like that next micro step in the experience for the member to say, hey, don't forget to do this thing, or hey, do you still want to continue this experience? The results are overwhelming. So, and I could throw numbers at you for days on this, but just a few, and these come from some very specific sources, but when a lot of research has been conducted in this area. Like I'll give you one data point. For example, in 2025, the spend on a technology standpoint on multi-channel kind of, for lack of a better term, orchestration is about $6.5 billion on technology. That's naturally across all industries, a lot of it online retail, et cetera. A lot of consumer-facing companies. By 2030, that's expected to grow to about 28 to $29 billion. And the reason is companies are seeing success with this. So a 287% higher purchase rate when using 3 or more channels. is the organization called OmniSend did a marketing statistics report. And that's one of the things that they reported. So 287% higher purchase rate when there was three or more channels being leveraged for, to kind of guide that consumer towards that purchase. 73% of retail consumers are omni-channel shoppers. It's definitely true for me. Like I find myself sometimes I will learn about a channel through Facebook or Instagram, and maybe I probably won't complete that purchase. Like I may learn about that brand, that product. I'll probably click and kind of engage with it. I won't be converted necessarily to a purchase at that point. But then what happens is because I've done that, I'll probably fill out something on their website or whatever the case might be, and now they kind of are going to continue to educate, nurture, and provide awareness. And so, a lot of people are like that, obviously, as this data says. And then the last one from a personalization report from Instapage said there was a 600+% increase in purchase rate when emails were personalized. And what allows emails to be personalized is by garnering data from other sources and leveraging that in the context of the email. If you're doing it without that, it's really hard to personalize those emails. And we're talking about personalizing a block, personalizing. I'm not talking about surface level personalization like hi Ryan. That doesn't really do anything. We're talking about like detailed contextual personalizing within the email, personalizing a block, personalizing something based upon a last purchase. That's the type of stuff that wins in this context. That's what's kind of being reported on here. All right, so what I want to do is I want to dive into a few kind of consumer oriented examples, and something to kind of kick off this, and then I'm going to ask a quick question to kick this off. Is I love this quote. I found this from Jeff Bezos. If y'all, of course, know who he is, the founder of Amazon. So if there's one, and this was a quote from early on. This is not a recent quote. It's a quote from, I would presume, late 90s. So if there's one thing Amazon.com is about, it's obsessive attention to the customer experience end to end. And I think that critical piece is the end to end, meaning from, naturally all the entirety of the experience, wherever it's being had, whatever device, whatever browser, et cetera, it's being had on. It's the attention to the personalization of that experience across the spectrum. All right, so there's something. So I'm curious, if you have experienced a cross-channel, what I would deem a cross-channel or what we've deemed cross-channel experience here, that's impressed you, what company provided it? And if you can give just a few words about it, that would be awesome. So again, so if you've experienced a cross-channel experience as a consumer that impressed you, that wowed you, that was through the roof, who provided that experience, and a few words about what it looked like. All right, as y'all are typing a few of those in, I'll kind of keep going here. And actually, thank you. A few folks said where they're coming from today, so that's cool. Washington, Chicago, Des Moines, awesome. I'm in Kansas City, as I said, if you missed it off the top. And actually, I'll read a few of these as they're coming in. So someone said, sometimes I get a text when I have an abandoned cart online. Annoying sometimes. I'm not going to disagree with that. It can be annoying, but it does get my attention and it brings me back. It's that fine line. Naturally, you don't want to be obnoxious, but you do want to be responsive, and you want to connect those experiences that allow a member to bring something to conclusion if they want to. Someone else wrote, I think this is Upprinted, or maybe Uprinting, triggered a drip campaign that was impressive and detailed to what I was looking at. That's awesome. So yeah, basically taking that experience from what you were looking at on a website, naturally, I suspect. Something else here. So I like Incas, I think is how this is pronounced. I found them on Instagram, and they send and then sent me an email, and then they plant a tree with a purchase. That's really cool. So I think that's Incas, Inkkas. Sheen, very easy to use. I can't read today. Very easy to use. Multiple payment options that are easy to use. Text or email reminders of items in my cart when the price lowers. My favorite part. Yep, I love that. So the price decreases. So they tell you, which is, I think not enough companies do that. I mean, that transparency. I mean, that's the transparency that wins. Is like, hey, this thing that you're interested in, it's a lower price right now. I feel like oftentimes companies are trying to guard from doing that, but that's really cool. Last one I'll read here. So I really only rely on cross-channel communication for my healthcare providers. That's interesting because they send me texts and emails about upcoming appointments and sometimes ringless voicemail. That's cool. I mean, again, that's the stuff that is shaping the experience that or the expectation your members are bringing to the experience they have with you. All right, so here's an example of something. This is a brand that I shop typically more for clothing for my kids. It's called Overtime, and I've made purchases from there before. Let's say up until last week, I've made 5 or 6 purchases there. It's all online. There's no physical brick and mortar. So they said, "Hey, you're invited to this, early Black Friday sale, 35% off." And we've been talking about how one of my sons needed a few extra sweatshirts. So I went there and I put a few things in my cart, totally forgot about them, got sidetracked, etc. All the stuff that we're talking about here. So this first email was on November 12th. I'm gonna guess that I put those things in my cart on November 12th at some point. So then on November 14th, in the afternoon, 1:38, I got an email said, "Hey, where's your follow through? Looks like you left some stuff behind." I didn't do anything with this. So 3 hours later, over text, they said, "Hey, Ryan, your cart's on fire and waiting. Don't let that deal slip away." And this is the one that got me because then you can see here, thank you for your order. This was, I think, the afternoon of the 14th, and I purchased those items. But the key here is the cross channel orchestration. So they're orchestrating across the 3 channels that I think are the most viable channels that associations have at their disposal: website, email, and text message. And they did a really good job of orchestrating across those 3. Now, one of the things we have to ask is like, okay, how can we get to that point? So a lot of it becomes, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, but this is a good example from Puma that kind of gets to this. So as everyone here has experienced, a lot of online retail, what they do is first time you come to the website, they're saying, "Hey, do you want to get X% off your order?" What that all is essentially is a way to get your contact information. And what that does is that identifies you as a visitor, and it basically cookies you with identified information. So next time you come back to their website, they know who you are, one. But then obviously you have the natural play of collecting your email address so they can engage with you over email. And typically a lot of those will then lead to an SMS validation and authentication as well. So this is a really good example of Puma who does this. Here's another really good example. What I think is really interesting about this that I'm going to dive into a little bit more is this. This spans physical, like in-person experience with online experience. So essentially, what's really powerful about this is it takes your online the things that you've basically told, like either your purchases or the things that you put in your cart. They have this whole kind of cart experience, and what it does is when you're in store, I think high level it uses geolocation to serve up more preferences and recommendations to you. So what's powerful about that naturally is it's taking the stuff that you're declaring that are your interests when you're online, when you're not in the store, and then it's marrying those with your experience in the store to kind of create this unified purchase and consumer experience, which I think is really powerful because naturally, what you have is as an association, you also have in-person experiences that can be married with this. So one of the things that I'll talk about in a little while is how you can bring conference data and into your overall kind of consumer or your member profile and use that. But at the same time, you have, experiential data. So you have like the LMS products or courses that someone is registered for, and you can use that to serve up the recommendations around a conference experience. There's a few comments in here that I just want to read. I haven't fully looked over them, so but I do. I just want to read these in case there's anything interesting in here. So I love it. I do not need to enter payment. Oh, I love it when I do not need to enter payment information, and I can use the options already on my phone. Yeah, that's great when it's just that unified experience where you're not having to re-enter information. Sometimes it's abused, such as not being able to see prices until you enter your information. I hate that. That is that is painful. One of the retailers, uh, I'll say, one of the retailers that does that that drives me nuts is Nike. I think Dick's Sporting Goods does that sometimes too, where it's like they'll like cross out like the dollars and say really low price. Okay, log in and we'll show you the price. I mean, for me, for what it's worth for me, like I don't, I would abandon that. Like that's just that's a terrible experience in my opinion. Those places lose me as a consumer. Yeah, I agree. Maybe it's just me being stubborn or maybe too familiar with how the sausage gets made. Can appreciate all that very much. But I feel like the more cross-channel outreach I get from companies, unless I specifically opt in, the less I am likely to actually make the purchase. So I agree. So all of this is backstopped by opting in. So yeah, I think I'll put it this way. There is a layer of trust that has to be maintained in this. And the trust um, is by the self-selection from the member, from the consumer saying, I want information from you, company, not being bombarded without having opted in. And really, I think the opt-in is a gate in a lot of cases for this anyway. The way that we see it, at least it certainly is. Someone else just wrote, it would be nice to easily opt out if you wanted. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I can talk to that a little bit more, but those mechanisms too typically exist. So like, for example, for me, like in the overtime example, like if I wrote to overtime, and I did this the other day, I actually cleaned up a bunch of my text messages. The way text messages work is at the carrier level. You may be familiar with this, so sorry if this is redundant. If you're getting text messages from a company and you just reply and you say opt out, or there's about 20 keywords, opt out, no thank you, unsubscribe, and a handful of other similar words, that will automatically opt you out at the carrier level, which the vendor, the company, has to honor. So it's opting you out of that company's basically SMS, all the way down to the Route 10 DLC brand, their text message brand. So it's actually easier to opt out of a lot of these things than people even kind of realize, which is strange to say. All right, so let's talk about how associations can achieve this. So I'm going to talk about this. Yeah, stop is a good one too. Yeah, stop is always, if you put stop or write stop in all capitals, it'll do the same exact thing. So I want to talk about some high level ways that associations can achieve this, and and then I'm going to get into some more specific examples. So the first thing that we need to do to get towards this experience, this kind of holy, holy grail kind of promised land experience that I've been talking about, is we have to identify visitors on the website. So we talk with a lot of associations, and the context that we talk about this with them is we have a website engagement product where from a high level standpoint, basically what we do is we use our Propfuel approach of asking questions and then driving engagement and a journey through the website. But almost all of our clients, before they start using this, they're just looking at Google Analytics and they don't really know. They may have 30,000 visitors on the site. They don't really know who any of them are. Maybe a small fraction of them sign in. So when they log in, they authenticate. But again, that data typically isn't connected back to anything that can be reported on. So what we need to do is we need to identify visitors. A few core ways that we can do that. A lot of platforms, what you can do is you can identify website visitors when they are handed off. They have that handoff from an email to your website. So you're cooking them. You can cookie them with that identified information, which is all first-party data coming from your email platform. Tying in to your AMS authentication and single sign-on. obviously, and making that connected back to your entire website experience is low hanging fruit. And then just using more calls to action to collect information. And I'll talk more about how PropFuel does this, but I think that's a huge opportunity for a lot of associations. And then marrying that to either create a new record for an individual or marry that with an existing record. But then the key is you have identified uh, um, data within the cookie for that individual. So you know who it is moving forward. So that's one thing. Identifying people who are on your website. We need way more, we're way fewer anonymized individuals. And I'm not talking about like handoffs from social media, third party, cookie data. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about first party data in all cases, or really even zero party data. So second thing is we have to figure out ways to collect and unify the data from all of the systems that are being used or all the systems that have touch points with your members. And this gets into a whole, I mean, you could I'm preaching to the choir here a little bit probably, but you could spend a lot of time on this, and you could talk, we could have philosophical conversations whether this should be the AMS, whether this shouldn't be the AMS, whether this should be a separate data warehouse or data lake. I'm not going to get into all of that necessarily, but the key is, however it's done, we have to take data from all of the different key touch points, AMS, website, LMS, community, mobile app, event, conference site, any other site, journal, any of those sites that have touch points with members and prospective members. Job board is another one. And they have to be unified in a single place where you can see that single snapshot of an individual, and say, okay, they did this year, this year, this year, this year, this year. The key is it has to be attributed back to an individual. Next is bringing in-person data. So, I talked about that Sephora example. There's so much data that's coming from conferences, and a lot of it is offline data. But I think it's important to figure out ways, and there are ways that you can kind of augment your experience. So if naturally, if oh, I'm sorry, someone just said I didn't get a notification, so I missed the first 30 minutes. I'm so sorry about that. We will sorry to do the squirrel shiny thing. But we will send you a link to the recording of this. So I apologize for that. All right, so unifying in-person data. So we have troves of data from in-person experiences. And a lot of the times those just live in a separate, either non-digital place or digital, just separate silo. Those have to be brought back together because there's so much crossover opportunity. There's the opportunity to say, hey, you know what? In the last 12 months, you purchased these 4 courses, distill out the topic of those, and then as someone is 30 days from the in-person your annual conference, send them an email or a text message saying, hey, based upon your course purchase history this year, here's a list of sessions that you might be really interested in. Again, what that does is that just builds this personalized experience, builds loyalty, and it simplifies things for the member. The last thing that I would say here, last thing that I would say is when we get this centralized data, it has to be actionable and we have to continue to kind of feed it. So when we talk about actionable, so wherever this data kind of layer is for an association, it has to be actionable in the sense that it has to be able to be connected back to a system of action, a system that is continually feeding it with more data. And more data looks like, naturally behavioral data, professional data, but there's this layer of data that is really intent, needs, satisfaction. Those are the things that really are the core from a data standpoint. And that's what I want to focus on a little bit here in terms of a couple of examples that I want to give you that really come back to kind of the heart of this. So this is an example. This isn't a client example, but this is a PropFuel example, an example of something that can be done. And I'm not gonna bring you through the filter of like how PropFuel does this and all that sort of stuff. I'm not touting PropFuel here. I'm just like this could be replicated in other ways, but I'm just giving you an example of something that could be orchestrated. So this is kind of what we call a journey builder in a sense, or maybe like a wayfinder interaction. So this is something that that would typically live on the homepage of a website. And what this is doing is this is teasing out, first of all, like what's your intent? What did you come to the website to do today? And kind of the back context of this is like we don't want you bouncing around the site. We don't want you, just kind of having to filter and search and maneuver through the website on your own and then maybe not find the stuff that you're looking for. At the same time, like we want to know if you're a member or a non-member, so we want to tease that out. And we want to get you to the right, if you are a member, get you to the right benefit. So, for example, in this context, if someone answers, this is basically a question format. If someone answers and they said, I want to learn about membership, what we're going to do is we know like they're a prospective member. They're not a member. So, like, we're not going to bring them to how to get involved and we're not going to bring them to find their local chapter because they're not a member yet. That stuff isn't relevant to them. What we're going to do is we want to capture information about who they are so we can nurture them through other channels. If they come back to the website next time, we can nurture them knowing they answered this question that they want to learn about membership, and we can bring them to the next natural step. So this is a mechanism to capture their contact information. And just high level, what we do with this is we capture their name, their email address. This can be formatted different ways. And what we're going to do is if there is no record for this person in our database, we're going to create a prospect record for this person. We're going to add them to well, let me back up. We're going to create a prospect record for them. If there is a record tied to the email address that they enter here, we're going to attribute this answer and this website interaction data to that record. And in both of those cases, what we're going to then do is add them to a 3 to 5 step nurture campaign that's going to ask me things like, hey, what are you most interested in, about becoming a member? And then, based upon the answer to that, do different things. And then 2 weeks later, hey, what's holding you back from becoming a member? And, so on and so forth. What we're also going to do is there is substantial value and like increased conversion and ROI when we can build out more channels. So what we're also going to do here is say, and I missed the step for this. Yeah, I didn't screenshot it. There's a step in between here that is a question that asks, would you like to opt into SMS? And so, because we wouldn't go straight to mobile number, sorry, I screwed that up. So it's asking, would you like to opt into our SMS to receive messages? And it's a formal consent opt-in. So when you answer yes to that, it's going to flag SMS consent for that contact record. Then it's going to ask me for a mobile phone number, and it's going to validate that it is a mobile phone number. So it's going to tease out if it were to happen to be a fax line or a landline, and then it would actually tell us that. And so then it's going to, when we have a valid cell number, it's going to add me to an SMS campaign, and it's going to nurture me that way as well, based on the interaction that we see across the other channels. So that's kind of high level what we're doing there, and that is extremely effective. I'll give you an example of that actually right now that is really powerful. So this client, this is an example of that, and let me actually back up a little bit. For the next probably 15 to 20 minutes, what I'm going to do is I'm primarily going to go through a little bit more of a detailed walkthrough demo like of PropFuel, how PropFuel kind of accomplishes a lot of these things from a cross-channel standpoint. So if you don't want to stay for that, you definitely do not have to. If you do stay, we'll send you a Starbucks gift card. So if you stay and you watch the next 15 to 20 minutes and check out how PropFuel does a lot of this, like I said, we'll send you a Starbucks gift card. If you can just send us the email address, add it to the chat, the email address that you would like us to send your Starbucks gift card to, we will take all of those and we'll send everyone a Starbucks gift card. So thank you for that. All right. So how PropFuel kind of helps to accomplish this. So this is an example where this is probably lives on about 15 pages on this client's website. And so what this is teasing out what they want to do. It's that same kind of wayfinder experience. And so I'm going to select my answer. And what's powerful about this that is different than a lot of website calls to action are those website call to action are, and this is where we kind of distinguish things a little bit. Those website calls to action are, hey, we'd like to give you a discount. We don't know what you want, but add your name and email here and we'll give you a discount. We're trying to package that a little bit differently. We're trying to say like specifically like what exactly do you want to do here? And so we have a point of intent, and then we're going to collect information about who you are. So if I say I want to become a member and then I add my information here, essentially what's going to happen is I'm going to be added to a campaign, that an email campaign that is going to touch base with me with 4 to 5 touch points over the next month and a half. So basically what and I don't know the exact order of these, but so this is one of them. So this stems directly from what I just showed you. So you fill this out, we create a new prospect record for that person in the database, or attribute this response and any other website interaction data with the existing contact record. And this is kind of a consumer-oriented association. They have about 120,000 members. So there's a lot going on, a lot of opportunity with this organization. So essentially now we're going to engage them in a few ways. So we're going to say, hey, you don't want to miss the newsletters. Do you want to opt in? And then we're going to come back to them and we're going to say, like, what would you like to know? Because again, all of this can enrich what we can tell them about instead of just telling them about everything. That's the whole premise of what we do at PropFuel really effectively. And then we're going to follow back up and we're going to say, hey, are you interested in joining? We're going to follow back up 2 weeks later. What's holding you back from joining? What this campaign has done, these guys have been running this campaign for about, probably 45 days or so. And I'll show you the results from it. It's pretty powerful. So, and honestly, I wouldn't have believed these results if just being brutally honest, it's been phenomenal. So first of all, a couple of things. So we have the response rate of the people that have engaged with this. So 14% of the people that saw this pop up engaged with it, which is a really high engagement rate. So when you look at consumer-oriented pop-ups and that sort of stuff, typically they perform at about 3.5 to 4%. So 3.5 to 4% of people who see those pop-ups actually reply and engage with them. So we saw 14% response rate. Then out of that, so we've whittled that down a little bit to about 4,000 people. So about 4,600 people. So right at about half of those people have actually converted. So since they've been running this, and this is all PropFuel, this is functionality within PropFuel where we track conversions and all this sort of stuff. But basically what we're doing here is we're saying 2,310 people have converted to become a member of AMA, generating $184,000 in annual membership revenue as a result of this campaign and the touch points coming off of it. So whether they converted directly from the website through that first interaction or converted from the email campaign, that's all bundled into this. And behind the scenes, we parse out where they specifically came from. But this is a great example of engagement cross-channel and how to really do it effectively. Another example is this one here, and it's probably too soon to really have results on this one, but I love this. So this is ACRP, Clinical Research Professionals. They have this home study LMS product. And so basically they're saying, hey, we've got a special deal for you. Would you like to participate in it, the home study? And what this does then is it captures who they are. If they say yes, it creates that record. It does the initial steps of an automated enrollment in that program in their system of record. And then it takes you through a series of nurturing steps and basically connects you through the 3 channels of website, email, and text message. And part of why I say that is in all these examples here, what the system is smart enough to do is say, if I say yes to this, and then let's say there's another step where I have to go and I have to select a preference just for argument's sake. It's going to add me to an email campaign to automate the request of that through email. But let's say I ignore that, I ignore the text message, and I just happen to come back to ACRP's website. The PropFuel product is smart enough to know this person, identified individual, this person, gave this response last time they were on the website, hasn't completed these steps through these channels. So we know that. So now let's ask them the next thing that we need them to do through the website. It knows to do that. So it's all of that, those layers of logic are built out. So it would basically have them complete that step, and then it would stop asking them to complete that step through email or text message or whatever it is. And that's a huge part of the orchestration of this, is just that intelligence layer to know what to ask someone, what to request of someone, when and where is a big part of this. Another way to think about kind of cross-channel engagement, and there's lots of ways, but another way is to think about the annual conference. So this is an example where a lot of our clients will use Propfuel to drive registration. We had one of our clients, Vex, this organization, they drove about 450 registrations to their annual conference. Actually, I haven't seen this on their website. That's awesome. A little dog image. So this is a Propfuel pop-up on their website. So they drove about 450 conference registrations to their annual conference, and about half of them were, if I remember correctly, were first-time conference registrants. And basically, the way that we did that was by on their conference site, we asked a question. It was different than this one. It was something along the lines. It was kind of like this, but like, what can we help you to do today on the conference site? Submit an abstract, register, et cetera, et cetera. And what we do is we tease out here, because there's a great opportunity around membership typically. So what could we help you with today? Want to register for the annual? What we want to do here is understand, are they a member or are they non-member? Because likely if they're a member, they're probably not logged in. So if I say, yeah, I'm a member, then it's going to say, hey, great. It's going to bring you to the login page, and it's going to say, hey, by logging in, you save XYZ on your membership, da, da, da. And so that serves a few purposes, gets them the discount, kind of going back to the example someone gave of like the alert to like, hey, we want to get you that discount. We don't want to hold that back from you. But then also by logging in, makes them an identified individual on the website. At the same time, if someone says, no, I'm not, what we're going to do is collect their information. We're going to nurture them about the conference, but nurture them towards membership as well. And you can do that a few different ways, but that can be really powerful at the same time. We've had some clients do that and actually see a considerable spike of membership purchases alongside of conference registration, where they were typically living at a very moderate level of those, and they've seen a significant spike in that. So that can also be really powerful at the same time. And then we think about like any of the other areas of membership. So this can be really effectively used for things like renewals, lapsed member win back. What Propfuel does really effectively, and if you're not familiar with it, I'll just high level kind of give you that kind of walkthrough. So what Propfuel does really effectively is it just overarchingly removes the guesswork from the member experience. So when we think about that example that I kind of gave early on of the new member who joins, what we don't want to do is send them an email that's 8 paragraphs long with links to 35 member benefits, because they'll probably do what I would do, which is snooze that email, snooze it, feel really guilty, not go back to it, snooze it, and ultimately not do anything. And then 3-4 months into my new member experience, I'm kind of a disengaged new member, and you know where that goes from there. I mean, you know exactly what that path looks like with your members, and you know why year one renewals are probably the hardest renewals for a lot of associations. So what we want to do here is we want to give the ability for the member to simplify and filter down. So we don't need to tell them about everything, but if I say here, like, I want to expand my knowledge and skills, what we're going to do is we're going to bring them to a page to show them how they can do that with the org. With ISTE, we're going to segment them in Propfuel and add them to another set of nurturing campaigns. We're going to update the AMS automatically with data. That's a core part of Propfuel. It's really powerful, where we can update member profiles in any AMS without members ever having to log in. So meaning with one single click and an answer to a question, we could update, in this case, we would update Fontiva, their AMS, with that data. We have integrations with over 50 AMS platforms where we do this, and it's huge. It's so impactful in terms of building out the preference data around your members, but even building out demographical data, professional practice. Like, we have clients that build out full member profiles by asking questions out of Propfuel. What this also does is it gives us the opportunity for a touch point downline that could be cross-channel, but in this example, it's staying over email. But what we're doing is 90 days later, after the person answered that initial question, we're saying, hey, have you accomplished that initial goal of expanding your knowledge and skills? And let's say something about my member, my background has changed. Let's say, sucky for Monday before Thanksgiving, but let's say I lost my job. So now I'm going to say that's no longer my goal. And one of the things Profil can do is any answer can lead to a follow-up branch question and journey. So now when I say that's no longer my goal, it's going to branch me to his question and say, what is your goal? And then it's going to take that data and then re-nurture me in a different way, bring me down an entirely different journey and path based upon that answer and that adjustment that I need as a member, which would probably go unseen otherwise. I mean, you know how these things go. It would have to go unseen unless we were asking. So that's the power of asking versus kind of broadcasting information and guessing. And that approach is something that we take to all three channels of email, SMS, and the website experience. All right, I'm gonna look and see if you have any questions, please write them in. I'm just gonna look and see. Looks like lots of people gave their email, which is fantastic. Uh, Someone said, thank you for using the same strategy on us that you taught us about, LOL. Capture the email address. Great example. Thank you. That's funny. It's funny how that kind of came through. I didn't necessarily intend it that way, but that's funny. Yeah. Great question. So if you create an account without someone logging in, how do you get the person to log in at some point to buy something, register, join the community, etc.? Okay, so let me make a distinction there. So we're not creating an account. So let's just give this example. So I'll go back to the background here. So ISTE is the association. I just joined as a new member of ISTE, and I'm going to actually like play this all the way through. So I definitely want to clarify this. All right, so they have a onboarding campaign. Yeah, actually, no, it's the wrong one. Sorry, it's this one. All right, so I've joined ISTE, and when I joined, like most associations, when you join, you have to create your profile in order to join. So, like with their AMS, I have a profile inside of Fontiva, and what we're doing is there's Fontiva records, and this is the case with every AMS. It could be IMS, Aptify, across the board. We're getting data that is either depending on the AMS, it could be like it could be an IQA query if it were IMS. It could just be like reports like this with Salesforce Fontiva. It could be actually like what we call a context search where we can like compile data fields from your AMS. So we could say like if member type is equal to standard, and on top of that, if the join date is within the next, or let's say after 2 days have passed, then automatically add this person to this campaign. So like we can compile your AMS data just about any way to get the right people in. Then we're automating the process of asking them this. And so when the person answers, what we're not doing is creating a profile. They already have the profile. We're just attaching this data point to a field. So we're mapping this data point to a field in the sense that we're saying, hey, you respond this way. What we're going to do is we're going to update this field inside of Fontiva. Whatever the field is, let's just for argument's sake, let's just say it's Mailing Street, and we're going to update it with the Profil response automatically without the member ever having to log in. That's what we're doing. We're not creating a profile. I hope that helps. Someone asked, can you add these Profil pop-ups to a WordPress site? Absolutely. So we have about the website product for us is newer. We launched that about 10, 11 months ago, early this year. Probably have about 70 or 80 clients using it. And they're on every single different CMS that you would imagine, from WordPress to Drupal to, IMS Rise to YM's, CMS to MemberClicks and across the board. So we have this pretty much validated and running on all of the different CMS options that an association would use. Yeah. I hope that helps. And part of that is there's a lot of flexibility with that product too, in terms of just so you know like how you can configure it and how you can run it. And there's a few cool elements actually as well that I should probably highlight. But just to give you some perspective, so um, you can basically um, style this any way that you want. So you can style it, you can say how you want it to run on mobile, you can do all the different elements of it, header, footer, all this sort of stuff. You can set conditions. The conditions are really powerful. So you can layer this with all sorts of stuff. So you could say if someone answered a previous question a certain way, and if someone is, or separately, so let's take that one off, but let's say if someone is a um, newer returning visitor. So let's say it's a new visitor. Actually, let's say it's a returning visitor. And on top of that, their browsing history is such that previous pages viewed were three, let's just say three, time frame, this visit, any visit, previous visit, frequency. You can also layer on top of this other things like contact authentication, query parameters. So you can do this from a very basic way to just say like, hey, if they hit this web page and they're a new visitor, serve this up to them. Or you can get super advanced with UTM parameters, cookie parameters. You can put it behind your cookie banner, of course. You can do some really powerful stuff. So it's got a very wide spectrum in terms of like sophistication, in terms of clients using it. So yeah, uh, Nancy, you just wrote back, which is good. Thanks. It might be helpful to indeed create an account called non-member. Okay, so that's a good point. So, and that's where there's a little bit of a difference. So if someone was coming like, if we're using this example of what we showed earlier, where we're creating a record here for the person, we didn't know who they were, then yeah, we would. That's a great point. You would want that person to be in the AMS, and you'd want to create a non-member record from them. Typically, when we're sending emails like this to new members and things like that, they're in the AMS. And I was kind of just thinking of it in a very narrow way. So that's really good, kind of broader context. So yeah, thank you for that. All right. We have 4 minutes left, 3 minutes left now. So, that said, if you have any other questions or comments, I would love to hear them. If not, if you want to learn more about PropFuel, I would love for you to set up time to meet with us. So Alejandra just put a link. If you want to book a demo to learn more about PropFuel, again, we work with 320 associations, all sorts of sizes, all sorts of spectrums in terms of membership size, AMS, vertical, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to join today. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thank you for joining on a Monday before Thanksgiving, and enjoy. Go Chiefs! Enjoy watching the Chiefs play the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. All right, I'll hang here for another minute in case anyone has any questions. Sports, Brittany, sports. Uh, thank. Thanks so much, everybody. Like I said, I'll hang here for a moment. If you want to use this QR code to book time to meet, learn more about PropFuel. But again, thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to join us today. All right. Actually, I probably won't make everyone sit here in awkward silence. So we can conclude things. So thank you again, everyone, for taking the time to join us today. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and talk to you soon.